When things are difficult, both socially and politically, the power of we rises up. And I think that's what we've seen in Arm in Arm over the last few years.
The way crisis ministry started was incredible, I think. Two pastors, Wallace Alston from Nassau Presbyterian Church and Johnny Crocker from Trinity, basically said, there is a need right now. There is an emergency need, and we need to set up something. It was all in our basement, in the basements of the churches. But we went out and looked for volunteers. The board members went out and looked for volunteers to help feed the hungry. Well, there is no lack of people in this area that were really excited about that opportunity. I know that sounds silly, but people started, sounds silly to use the word opportunity, but people started bringing groceries and telling other people about it. We went to churches and told other people about it, and it just continued to grow happily.
So the mission of Arm in Arm is center to the core of the ministry of Nassau Presbyterian Church, because it's core, what Arm in Arm does is core to the gospel that Jesus teaches. Caring for the poor, providing food for the hungry, helping folks who are at risk of being housing insecure to stay in their homes. I mean, that for us, that just comes right out of the gospel that we teach and preach. And Arm in Arm has helped us to increase our footprint. And our members of our congregation give to Nassau Church and also support Arm in Arm over and above the church's support. And it's because it rests right at the very core of who God calls us to be.
So it's always about walking together, working together, praying together, weeping together, and celebrating together. And so this calls us to always reach beyond ourselves, the limitations and the limits of our own somewhat self-imposed boundaries, and to reach beyond those boundaries to others. And so it's a wonderful give and take and synergy, I think, happens between Arm in Arm, between Nassau, between Trinity Church, between the volunteers, between those who were served, and relationships are formed that never would have been formed, and blessings happen we never could have envisioned.
I can remember in the earliest days of my ministry here, Arm in Arm was operating out of the Sunday school classroom in the lower level here, packing groceries and then taking them to Trenton and handing them out at a church in Trenton. And to think of how it's morphed, and especially around the pandemic under David Fox's leadership, to move to a mobile ministry. I mean, I watched David in conversations with community leaders throughout Mercer County on Zoom in the early days, where he really stepped up and had a vision for what could happen for Arm in Arm, and how Arm in Arm could move into that space when other alternatives of not doing anything were actually very possible.
We didn't set out to be anything in particular, just to be something. We responded to the need. And, we want to be a servant in this community. If the need is in one area where they say, hey, you know what, Arm in Arm, we really could use you to tackle this. I mean, as long as we have the support, we try things.
Arm in Arm does have the License to Succeed program, which actually helped me. I mean, I was at one time homeless. I was one time, dealing with a lot of different obstacles in the way. I remember there was a time, and I actually said this, that if I didn't hit the lottery, I won't have any license. And thanks to the License to Succeed program, it's happened. And I've been driving now for 8 years since then.
When we were challenged the greatest, this community, Arm in Arm, and I mean that in the extended community, staff, board, volunteers, donors, community partners. This community stepped up as never before and found creative solutions. And that to me is, a wonderful thing that we were able to do, continue and actually grow.
I think the most important part of Arm & Arm, the strongest part of Arm & Arm, is that hungry people are fed. Folks are able to stay in a place to live. People are able to get a security deposit to get their utilities. You can't talk about the importance of Arm & Arm and what's the most strongest part of Arm & Arm without saying that people are being helped. And not just, there's working people working 2 or 3 jobs coming to Arm & Arm and getting food. And the assumptions that folks have about who the poor are or who clients are just not accurate. I also continue to be impressed by the staff of Arm & Arm, their loving kindness, their respectfulness. Anybody who comes is treated with dignity. Anybody who has a need is listened to. And that's a remarkable gift, because hungry folks who need help are often invisible and unseen. And in Arm & Arm, they're not. They are cared for and treated with dignity.
We are in more places, and yet the lines still continue to grow. For instance, on average now, we're probably here somewhere between 160 and 200 families every time we open our doors for just 2.5 hours of service. That's a lot. We have seen places in the mobile pantries that have gone from 60 families, for a morning to 160 families a morning. Now we're averaging around 150 on average with all of our pantries. So those numbers are just large. That shows a critical need.
It really hits home for me when I think about our clients, especially those who may not have been given some of the breaks and the privileges that others have. This notion that it's really hard to focus on anything in your life when your basic needs are not being met, right? When you're hungry, when you don't have a place to go home to, or you're not sure how long you might, or you're not feeling secure in your job. These are all things that are so fundamental to our human existence. And I wanted to help alleviate some of those pressures on people's shoulders. I will say the other thing, as a mother, the idea of kids having to go to school hungry just gutted me. And so I thought if we could help to support more of these needs, to help more people get back on their feet and be able to thrive, I can't think of a more important mission than that.
One of the things that we always have to navigate as an organization, as a board, is the constant variability of what's happening socially, politically, economically, and I'm sure in other aspects too. And it feels like now more than ever that uncertainty and it is a bit heightened. But it makes things hard and challenging around how do we plan for a future which is unknown. And I think it goes back to your other question, Dave. What's the board do? We're trying to prepare this organization for any future and think through different scenarios and different, paths that we can take around how we can best serve and help this community. But I would say that's sort of the biggest challenge. There's a lot of, there always is, but a lot of uncertainty and unknowns. And, how do we help navigate through that?
Well, managing through COVID was a bit wild, I will say.
Great.
I give so much credit again to the staff, the leadership, and the board, really having to innovate on a dime, right? The way in which we delivered food to clients just had to fundamentally pivot. And what was so amazing, not only did that innovation occur, but we actually served more families where they were during that time, and it completely even changed the course of the future of Arm & Arm. I would also say finding our new location at Mill 1 was really exciting and opened up opportunities for more volunteers, for better storage, for events, and so much more.
Creative ways to help people sustain themselves with equitable living, meaning if you're paying $1,800 a month or $2,000 a month, and it's just going to rent. And we're seeing now, the last week we heard, I asked the housing team in our meeting last week, what's the average amount that people are paying for rent? 70% of their income. She said, we're happy if we see 70% today. That's incredible. I mean, think about that. That's not even money that's going to be equity down the road. That just goes right out the window. So I say these things to say, these are creative ways that we'd love to partner with groups. We don't feel like we can do it all ourselves, but we'd love to be able to be part of that solution too.
there's so many incredible organizations in this community that are doing really great work, and I would see this as a big opportunity in the future. And I know you've taken a big leadership role in helping to establish a coalition and a consortium of leaders from these different nonprofits to figure out, hey, could there be places where 1 and 1 might equal 3, where we have strengths that can counterbalance each other and make ourselves stronger. And it's really exciting to think about the future when we think about that. And there's an old African proverb, right, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think it's a great analog for who we are in Arm in Arm, but also how can we continue to sort of really work amongst all these different nonprofits in the community and figure out if there's ways that we can be even more powerful together.
Yeah.
When the mobile delivery started, my wife Kathy and I volunteered to do deliveries. And we were delivering to apartment communities that we've driven by for 15 years or more, and had no idea driving back in those apartment communities how many units there were, how many people lived there. I'm talking multiple different communities, not just one. And that's what people don't see when you don't live in Princeton. Or if you don't deliver and pull into some of these apartment communities, the population is significant.
But I think aspirationally, our role is, how do we figure out what our unique role and our position is in that larger scale view? And I think the next 5 years, I'd love to get to a point where we could start to, in essence, take some of those uncontrollable variables and make them a little bit more controllable. So whether it's being able to get better at forecasting what needs are, whether it's being able to establish a little bit of a nest egg or an endowment or a bit of more financial security. But I think by and large, strategically, we're at a pivot. We're heading towards our 50th year, is ensuring that we've got the right focus. We can't do it all. We got to focus and figure out our role. And I think you said it before, where are we going to pick those points where we partner versus we're going to play, and be really clear and decisive in that. So, I think the next 5 years is going to be one of these, again, next transformative times for the organization.
Yeah. For 45 years, we found a way. We found a way. And we've built that foundation of Arm in Arm on this bedrock of we. So that in moments like this, if you look at just our funding streams and our partnership base, it's a wide, diverse group. And that really is the thing that I think will be the most promising way to keep us moving forward.
We should not focus on that which stands between us, but look to that which stands before us. And I think Arm in Arm sort of calls us to that place. Let's not look at what stands between us. That's not going to get us anywhere. But let's come together to see what stands before us and what we need to do and what we need to address together. And there's too many people in our world that want to look at what stands between us as in a dividing way and to keep us separated. And I think the ministry of Arm in Arm and I hope the example that the churches have set working together would be, we can't look at what stands between us, but what stands before us is possibilities and opportunities and ministry to serve and to care, the power of we to be a better us and a better community.
For me, Arm in Arm helped me with getting myself together. That's the first, because we have a group every Saturday, once a month, and then we talk about life, how's the life is going for us, what is bad, what is good, and how my arm helped me with food for my fridge, clothes for myself, for my baby, toys for my baby. And the most I enjoy the company of Arm in Arm team. We work together, we get where we are together, and we strong, and we're gonna keep it out. We're gonna keep doing it. And at the end of the day, I thank Arm in Arm for my mindset that I have now, because everybody inspired me to be who I am now.
Well, I'm real gracious. I really am. I'm always felt as though I'm doing a good thing. I'm doing a good deed. So every morning I wake up, I don't take or hesitate to get ready, so to speak. I'm ready to come out and just help and serve.